So now we've got ourselves set up with PHP, we're going to look at how to do some real programming with it. And we'll start by looking at variables. You'll remember that a variable is something that has a name and a value. So in JavaScript, for example, we would set up a variable using var and then name equals Rob, something like that. That's how we would create a variable called name with the value of Rob in JavaScript. In PHP, similar but slightly different. Whenever we're working with variables in PHP, we use the $ symbol. So Shift-4 on my keyboard, and then the variable name. So I might want to use $name like that. And then I just set whatever I want it to in exactly the same way as JavaScript. And don't forget your semicolon. And that's it. So we don't use var or any other command to create a variable. We just use the $ symbol and then whatever variable name we want, and then we set it equal to whatever we want it to. So here's a quick challenge. Can you work out how to display the value of the $name variable on our web page over here? Go for it. Did you manage that? Hopefully you used some variant of echo, because that's the command that we know for displaying things on the page itself. And then we just use $ and name, and of course semicolon. And that's it. So let's have a look and see. Yep, that displays Rob. Some of you may have tried something like that, which actually works as well. If we run that, it does do the same thing, because PHP is pretty clever, and if it sees a variable name inside a string, it will actually not display the variable name, but the value. So we might want to have something like my name is, and then we could just put the variable name right there in the string, and PHP will recognize it and replace the variable name with the value. Another way to put strings together is to, let's say we've got a variable called string1. This is the first part, and string2 is of a sentence. Then we could combine those using echo string1 dot or period string2. And that's what's called concatenating. You might remember we did it with a plus sign in JavaScript, but in PHP it's a full stop or a period. And then we get both of those together. Notice I'm missing a space there. So here's a mini challenge for you. Can you change this line, line 11, so that there's a space in the middle of part and of? Go for it. Did you manage it? The easiest way, I think, is to do something like that. So this means string1 dot and then put a space in, and then dot and then string2. There we go. And of course we can put HTML in these as well. So we can make them their own paragraphs so they appear on separate lines. There we go. So those are all string variables because they contain a string of characters, but we can do things with numbers in PHP as well. So let's have a variable called myNumber, and initially we'll make it 45. And then we can do all sorts of maths with that if we want to. So we might have a variable called calculation, and this is going to be my number, and you can have whatever you like really, multiplied by 31 divided by 97 plus 4. No idea what that is, but then we can display it. And let's have a look. There we go. Turns out to be that. Now, unlike some languages, PHP is very unfussy about the types of its variables. So you'll notice it started off as a whole number, an integer, And then when I did this calculation, it became a decimal, but I didn't have to redefine it or anything like that. Some languages you need to be very careful about the type of your variable. With PHP, you really don't. And we can use this variable in exactly the same way we did the strings. So we might have something like the result of the calculation is, and then we could put dot and then the variable name, and PHP will work on that just fine. All right, almost there. A couple more things I'd like to show you. The first is Boolean variables, which we've seen before in JavaScript, and we can use those in exactly the same way in PHP. So we might have myBool, for example, and we could set that equal to either true or false. And then we might have something like this statement is true, question mark, and then put myBool in there, and then close that paragraph. Let's have a look, see what it gives us. It doesn't give us actually true or false. It gives us a 1 or a nothing. And that's actually how PHP treats true and false. True is considered to be a 1 and false is considered to be nothing, or in some cases a 0, but mostly nothing. So that's Boolean variables. Lastly, I just want to show you one kind of fancy way that you can access variables, and that is you can actually store variable names within variables. So if, for example, I set a variable called variable name to be equal to name, I can then echo $$ variable name. Now, any ideas what that's going to display? Have a guess. Did you get it? Bizarrely enough, it's Rob, because variable name with a $sign in front of it means name. So this means $ and then name, and that means Rob. So it's a pretty rare situation that you'd want to do something like that, but it's quite nice to have the option. Okay, that's as far as we're going to go with variables in PHP. In the next video, we'll look at it. In the next video, we'll take it one step further and look at arrays.